Hello, and welcome to the third episode of My Life with MS. If you're following along so far, I've gone through my initial diagnosis, the symptoms that brought me there, and the beginning stages of my treatment and my treatment experience. So right now, if you have been following along, the last that you heard was that I took a pregnancy test before my next infusion of Ocrevus. So one of the things I wanted to point out is that I was feeling very, very alone and depressed leading up to this infusion. With all my might, I didn't want to go through with it. I wanted to run away from it. I wanted to stop. And just looking back, I do feel like the nurses and the neurologists, they're very much pro-treatment. They've seen it all. I get it. But treatment just wasn't working for me. I am too young for this. I didn't want to do treatment every 6 months for another 30, 40, 50 years. Ocrevus depletes a certain cell in your body. It makes your immune system low. So there are a lot of high risks with other illnesses, and on top of that, other diseases and or cancers. And then one thing I forgot to mention is the risk of PML. So PML is an issue with your brain. And if that happens, you can die. I had to sign a waiver every single time I got an infusion over the years saying that I understand that this could result in PML. And there is a test they can do to see if your risk for PML is high or low. Mine was always low, but definitely recommend asking about that before you do your treatments and looking into PML a little bit more to see if that's something that you are okay with risking. Thank God that did not happen to me, and thank God that has not happened to anybody that I know. It is a very, very rare and low chance, but it is so, necessary that you have to sign a waiver every time before you do an infusion saying that you understand that this treatment can cause PML. So there's just a lot there. That's a lot for anybody to take. Hey, here's a triple-edged sword. You have multiple sclerosis. If you don't do anything about it, you're going to get worse and end up in a wheelchair. If you do something about it, you could get worse, but at a slower pace. And if you do this treatment about it, you could get PML, which is an issue with your brain. And that's just so much for someone to comprehend. Like the amount of fear that comes into play here, knowing that all three roads lead to destruction, one way or another. And not only that, but the PML, your risk gets higher the more and more you do treatment. So there are some warriors that I've met that had a low chance of PML, and then after a year of Tisabri or a few years of Tisabri, that chance actually grows. Over time, doing treatment, you could develop a higher risk for PML. I don't mean to scare anybody. I just didn't realize the amount of risks that came with treatment. So with this treatment coming up, I had a meltdown, and I prayed to God, God, please take this away from me. I do not want to do treatment. I do not feel good about doing treatment. I do not see my life leading in this direction where I do treatment back to back for the next 30, 50 years. The course of my life and my healing journey changed when I found out I was pregnant. There's so many different layers to unravel here. Number one is that I had an excuse to tell my neurologist, who I'm scared to talk to, by the way, that I didn't want to do treatment. And here's why. Because I found out I was pregnant and I'm going to have a baby. Number two, I now had to be the healthiest person so that my pregnancy goes well. I now had to kick it into gear. So while I was pregnant, my neurologist strongly recommended that I stay on Ocrevus. And I strongly knew that I wasn't supposed to do that treatment anymore. God answered my prayers, and there's no way that I was going to go back onto Ocrevus. So just so happens that my neurologist got a second neurologist, and she wanted me to see this newer one who was more of an MS specialist. Okay, so I saw this new neurologist to my clinic, and he genuinely listened to everything I had been through, all my allergic reactions. I felt like he genuinely cared, which I do believe he did. And through this pregnancy, I told him I do not want to do treatment. So he actually recommended kind of this odd solution. This is not normally done for people with MS. It was done a long time ago for patients with multiple sclerosis before these new treatments came about. This treatment is an antibodies infusion just to boost your immune system. Now, I've been wiping out my immune system for just about 2 years. And what he wanted to do was get me onto something called an IVIG infusion. This is a monthly infusion. It takes about 4 hours. And what it does is it boosts your immune system. So I believe so you can overcome and rebuild your antibody level back up. The definition there is a little blurry to me, but I agreed to it. And I felt that during pregnancy, if I can get a boost to my immune system, that's got to be good for a human body that has been attacking it with treatments for several years. So I agreed to that. And every month during the pregnancy, I would go in for an IVIG infusion. Definitely ask your doctors about it if you're interested in something like this. I think it was more of an old school way of treating MS during pregnancy. There were no known harms to mother or baby while taking this treatment. There was no risks. So might as well. Okay, I'll do it. If it makes you guys happy, instead of stopping treatment completely, I'll do this IVIG treatment. Now, the IVIG treatment, I did have a few reactions. I would have what is called an infusion reaction again. So we had to, do the infusion a little bit slower. During these infusions, I would end up working. I'd bring my laptop, I'd connect to their Wi-Fi, and I would get a lot of things done. And then the other thing is that for some reason, because I'm such a basket case, about 3 days after the infusion, every single time, I would get a massive migraine. It was so crucial to drink so much water before the infusion, during the infusion, and after the infusion. I knew that I wasn't drinking enough water when I would get these massive, massive headaches. But some of the months where I was drinking lots of water and lots of fluids leading up to the infusion and after, the headaches were less. But these headaches were pretty bad. I would actually have to go to bed and lay down, and I would probably suffer for about 12 hours. Like one terrible, terrible night of suffering from a migraine that I couldn't get rid of. Medication didn't get rid of it. I was just in a lot of pain. So what I would end up doing is I would take Benadryl, because I didn't know if it was allergic reaction or not, but I would take a Benadryl or an Advil PM and try to sleep, because sleeping is what got me through those really terrible migraines. But it was a type of migraine that any pressure would set it off, or any light or any noise. So it was pretty bad. But I was okay dealing with one headache once a month, one night, if it meant that I didn't have to do the big, heavy treatments. I was kind of satisfying the doctors there. Multiple sclerosis and pregnancy is an interesting thing. There are a lot of concerns about progression, about flares. I feel that I had a fairly normal pregnancy. I did clean up my diet, take more vitamins. I kind of kicked things into gear. I wasn't just surviving and waiting till the next treatment come around. I was actually actively working on my body. My body was creating another body, so I had to take this stuff seriously. And for all you moms out there, you know exactly what I'm talking about. When you find out you're pregnant, you're like, whoa, like it's just such a crazy experience. Like there's something growing inside of me. It needs all the nutrients. We all want and pray for that healthy, beautiful pregnancy and beautiful baby. What can I do today? Try and make that happen. So I really kicked it into gear. Now, some of the things that I experienced with multiple sclerosis and pregnancy were a series of symptoms that came out of the woodwork. When I was diagnosed, I had numbness and tingling, and then I had optic neuritis, and I had a few other things. During the pregnancy, though, all of those kind of came back and stuck around. So I was very frequently tingly down my left side. I was very frequently numb in my arms and in my legs. I was very frequently experiencing optic neuritis, where I had black spots in my vision. And the newest symptom that came out of this, which was really weird, and I still have it today, is that I would lose my balance horribly if I couldn't see where I was going. So at night, if it was dark, I would fall. I would lose all my balance and fall to the ground if I couldn't see where my foot was being planted in that next step. So to adjust to that, I would have night lights, or I would always have a flashlight. That was the biggest thing for me. When you are pregnant and you have multiple sclerosis, you will most likely be sent to a high-risk OBGYN. And that's what happened in my case. So I was sent to a high-risk OBGYN, someone who works with patients who have multiple sclerosis and are pregnant, can understand a little bit more of what the patient is going through. And I truly, truly enjoyed that OB. And she was my OB until my son was born. I was really happy about that. So I do recommend asking for a high-risk doctor. Not only that, but being a high-risk patient meant that I got more frequent appointments with the OBGYN versus someone who maybe wasn't high risk. We got our checkups more often. I got more ultrasounds than normal. So it was just overall like a really good experience. Now, when it came to pregnancy and MS, I was really open to the fact that my body was doing its thing. My body was just going through this process. It's building another human. And I was taking all the vitamins, and I was really focusing on my health during this time. Then it was about my 8th month of pregnancy. So I'm a month away from giving birth. My neurologist at 8 months pregnant thought it would be a good idea to see how I'm progressing. And they scheduled me with a routine MRI at this time. So I agreed. And at this time, being 8 months pregnant, you can very visibly see that I'm pregnant. I'm very large, and the baby is kicking, and I can feel the baby, like everything. I mean, we are like a month away from giving birth. I'm going to tell everybody, I'm going to tell the world right now, whatever you do not get an MRI while you're pregnant. It is not a good experience. So I go in for this MRI. I'm already kind of dreading it. I don't really want to do this. And I have to get 3 MRIs. This is a brain MRI, a C-spine, and a T-spine. So 2 spine MRIs and a brain. And with contrast, I just realized. So I go into the MRI machine. I'm huge. I'm uncomfortable. I lay down. Of course, I had to sign some paperwork saying, yes, I'm pregnant. I'm aware that I'm pregnant. I'm going to do this MRI. And the machine starts going. So my baby freaked out. My baby was moving side to side, up and down, kicking all over the place. And I started bawling. I started crying my eyes out because I didn't know if there was anything happening to my baby that was harmful. You know, what am I doing in here? Why am I scared to stick up for myself and say no to these doctors? Again, I didn't want to do this MRI, but it was recommended, and I'm a pushover, and I just say yes to everything. So I actually, in that MRI, I probably lasted about 10 to 15 minutes, and I pressed that button that they give you, and I said, look, I can't do this, and I was crying, and I couldn't handle it. So they stopped the MRI, and I got out. I wiped my tears away, and I was like, I'm so sorry. Like, I can't go through with this. And I left, and it was a very bad experience because I thought I did something to my baby. He was moving around so much, and I knew, like, the loud noises. It was too much. So my recommendation to everybody who's pregnant, who has MS, do not get the MRI. If they tell you to get an MRI, do not do it. You can wait till after. So overall, my pregnancy went pretty well because I dove in and did all the things possible to make sure that I was as healthy as I can be, including the IVIG infusions, which I think helped kind of get me more balanced. So I am happy for that. I am happy that I was able to have a decent experience. And then I ended up giving birth to my son on May 20th, 2022. I did get induced. I got induced because the high-risk OB recommended that's the best way to do it, just in case if I go into a sporadic flare, they're going to be there to, have steroids ready. So I did get induced. I went into labor, and there was a concern of me having preeclampsia, so I did end up staying at the hospital for about 4 days. We were going a little crazy at that point, but overall, we came out of that well. We got through it. Then, I came home with my newborn and my husband, and we just started that life. So overall, my opinion on MS and pregnancy was that if you pay attention to what you're being told by the OB, take the vitamins, clean up your diet, do all the things you're supposed to do, you could potentially have a very successful and safe pregnancy and delivery. On top of that, I completely rededicated my life to God. That's a big part of this. God answered my prayer. He helped me stop the Ocrevus treatment. He allowed me to have this pregnancy, and I prayed hard. I prayed and I believed that God would listen to me. Help me have a safe pregnancy. Help me do all the things. Give me discernment one way or another. Lord, please protect me during this time. Please tell me what to do, what not to do. And I just gave it all to God. I gave everything to him. While I was pregnant, I said, look, this is in your hands. I will not worry about it. Just tell me what to do. I do believe that my son is here for a reason, and I do believe that my son saved me from a lifetime of treatment. There was a time where I was like so distraught with the multiple sclerosis diagnosis. I didn't know my future held. I thought like I'm going to be a burden to my family. How can I ever have kids? Because I'm going to be a burden to that kid. You know, because my life described by the doctors was that I'm gonna be disabled someday. It may be in a few years or it may be in 10 years, but you will be disabled. And I have to just advocate for people to not fall into that trap of believing that lie. That is not true. That is not true for a lot of MS warriors. You might have to make adjustments, and that's okay. But don't let the fear control your life so much that you're going to say no to having kids. Having my son, one of the biggest blessings of my life. It's completely changed the course of my health journey. It's all thanks and glory to God for that and for opening my eyes. And I truly, truly could not have gone through any of this if I didn't ask God for help. Whether you believe or not, everybody is looking for comfort in this process. And I found that comfort by reaching out to God. Because you know what? Doctors can only do so much. There comes a time where you have to stop believing everything the doctor says and everything the doctor tells you and start listening to what God's telling you. Because God will tell you. He'll put it on your heart. He'll convict you. He'll say, no, do not do that treatment. I want you to go in this direction. Or he'll say, do that treatment. That is the best thing for you. And I'm going to give you peace for that. God will do that. He will physically and mentally put it in your heart, tell you what to do, but you have to take the first steps and ask. I completely found my salvation in this experience, and I recommend for everybody who and whatever you believe, just give it a try. In my next episode, I dive into post-pregnancy experiences, my first MRI after pregnancy, those results, and, what happened when I decided to stop treatment completely. Again, in no way am I providing medical advice, only recommendations and my honest opinion. If you are at all interested in my journey, please continue. There's so much more I have to share with you about the things that I've learned when I stopped treatment completely. So please subscribe wherever you're at. Subscribe to this podcast. Continue listening to this story because there is a lot left. I'm about halfway through. There's a lot more to learn. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you on the next episode.